In this episode of the Sam Oldham podcast, I'm going to be answering questions sent in by some of our listeners. I'll also dive into a few topical stories from the world of gymnastics and share some of my own personal experiences. This is the 130th episode of the podcast, which marks the 2.5-year anniversary of the start of our show. Thank you to all of our listeners for their continued support and of course the sponsors that believe in what we are doing. And this is my story. This is 130 episodes. Incredible. Marks 2.5 years if my maths is correct. So pretty incredible that we've been able to consistently be putting podcasts out weekly. There's only been a couple of weeks, I think, in that time that we've missed. But we've always come back and hit you with some great episodes following that. And there's been weeks where we've uploaded a few. Instead of just one each week, it's been 2 each week or 3, particularly over the time of the Olympic Games. I remember us churning loads of episodes out during that time, and it's been an amazing journey. And I think I want to mark that occasion by answering some of the questions that have been sent in by some of our loyal listeners, and they are amazing questions. I want to point them out. So the first question was sent in by Tom Casey, who I believe Tom Casey is a gymnast from Great Britain. And his question was, what was your pre-competition routine and what was the mental prep that went into that? And a great question. I think it's one thing that athletes are always interested in when they listen to other athletes, particularly athletes that are maybe retired and have competed at that highest level that they want to reach themselves. And I think for me, it was a lot of visualization. I remember listening to a talk with Chris Hoy when I was in my early 20s. And looking back now, I was incredibly fortunate. Just to even say those words is pretty crazy, right? One of the greatest British Olympians of all time, and we all know Chris's story over recent times. What an amazing man he is. And I sat in a room and he told us about how he had visualized that race in Athens 2004 so many times that when it came round to it, it just felt like second nature. And I think the best routines that I ever performed in my life, it was that moment of switching the autopilot button on, as Lewis Smith has talked about many times on this podcast, and we've referenced many times, and lots of the great athletes speak about this, and you get into that flow state. And for me, it's because I've been there, I've done it before, I've seen it, and it's almost like second nature. And I think that visualization was a real key for me. I think the times in my career where I struggled to perform were probably times when I was struggling with self-confidence and maybe avoided that visualization. For me, my routine actually started the night before, and before I'd go to bed, I would always start. It was almost like it was very ceremonial in a way. I'd lie down in bed, close my eyes, I'd start on floor, the Olympic order, and I'd go through my routine. And normally I never made it to high bar. So I visualized a lot of floor and pommel routines, sometimes rings and vault, and then I'd just fall asleep. And I think it did help me go to sleep, but it was that routine. And that was, if I'm honest, I don't know whether you're going to sit and listen to this and go, that's pretty extreme. I feel sorry for you in some ways, but I do that every single night. And what's really fascinating is that in times of deep, maybe times of real stress, when I feel under pressure, in my head, I start doing it. I go to the first skill, and a lot of the time, it's the first skill on pommel. And I don't know whether that's because I felt like I had to do so much more work on pommel to be mentally prepared to perform a routine. But in times of pressure in my life now as a retired athlete and just, a young dad, a fiance, I find myself saying shear handstand, pick up, circle, stocklet, and I do it now. It's almost like this safety blanket and this thing that I lean on in times of discomfort. So yeah, visualization is a massive part of that, and it takes practice. In the beginning it feels awkward and disjointed, it doesn't flow well, you're interrupted quite easily. Whereas at the end, I think the times when I was really, really good at it, I remember one specific occasion, the second Olympic trial, Rio 2016 Olympic trials. I remember being there in the arena, closing my eyes and going from start to finish through floor to high bar And I think a couple of people came up to me to try and chat to me and sit next to me, and I just completely ignored them. I mean, one of them was Hamish, and at the time he was probably thinking, oh, that's rude. But it wasn't. This was like a big moment, and it was my last opportunity to go from start to finish and visualize my routines, and it worked. You know, to a degree. There was one mistake I made that day. I didn't fall, but it wasn't the routine that I'd visualized. But I really believe in that, and that mental preparation and that self-confidence, and the way that you talk to yourself, making sure that it is in a positive way. And for me, that was massive, that mental preparation. And I think at the end of my career, I really found the system and the thing that worked for me and helped me. And it was something that took 21 years to master. So start working on it. Figure out the things that you like, you don't like, the things that maybe work. I had a conversation with a young athlete today that's just been out to the World Student Games. And I said, after this competition, you've done some great performances. There's some that you'd like to improve on. Don't just ignore them now and move on to the next competition. Learn from them, and not in a hyper self-critical way. Go, why did that go wrong? What could I maybe do differently next time? So when you come round and you're in that position again, you haven't wasted that opportunity to learn the first time around. So I think that mental preparation for me was a lot of visualization, get myself into the right mindset, whatever that might be. And it might change from time to time, and that might develop as you mature as an athlete. But I think having a mental routine and a mental preparation that you stick to is really, really important as an anchor for those times of extreme pressure when you need something to rely on. If you do the same routine and the same mental prep that you do every single day in the gym, and that doesn't change, you'll find that you give yourself the best possible chance of doing a good routine when it counts, when it most matters under a lot of pressure. So that would be my answer, Tom. I hope you find that valuable. Next one was a group of questions, and they were really good, so I wanted to answer all of them. Musa Siddiqui. Now, I think Musa trains at Nottingham University, so this is really cool. I've never met him before, I don't think. So yeah, big up Nottingham for that. His first question: listened to a podcast recently with Sam Mustafi, another student that studied at Nottingham, has now moved back to Pegasus. Just competed at the World University Games, so well done, Sam. He did really well, made 2 finals. Big opportunity for him, and he did really well there. And I'm sure it's given him a lot of confidence moving forward. But to get back to Musa's question, he heard Sam talk about university and training at Nottingham alongside his university studies. He's not necessarily sure that was the best for his elite gymnastics career, which is an interesting point, right? And Musa's essentially asking, do you think a university and going and studying alongside your gymnastics is a better option, or if you're trying to make it to the very top in sport, actually becoming full-time at 18 and going at it 100%? I think it's a nuanced conversation there, Musa. It depends individually on you, what you want out of life. I think the best advice I could give you in that situation is to really, at that age of 18, 19, and we're going to have another question that relates to that age in particular, really try and lengthen and stretch out your time horizons. I think if you're thinking, I want to be at the Olympics at 21, then potentially going to university at 18 isn't going to be isn't maybe the pathway for you. But if you are wanting to have a long, healthy career and potentially go and compete at multiple Olympic Games, and you also want to set yourself up for life after gymnastics, or if anything happens, the reality is, we learned in the last week that gymnastics is dangerous, and best wishes go to the Italian gymnast Lorenzo that has, suffered a very, very serious injury on the rings and was put into an induced coma. And so we're sending all of our best wishes over there, because it was a real reminder of just how dangerous gymnastics is. If you want to set yourself up and have that backup plan, then I don't think it's a bad idea. And you're going to go to university and you're going to develop lots of different skills that you won't necessarily get from going down the elite path of gymnastics. But I think it's very individual. And I think you have to be a little bit realistic with yourself. At 18, if you're not one of the top 5 guys in the country in your age group, and there's a long way for you to go, and maybe you're one of those people that is a slower burner, then maybe university is the right thing for you. But if you're someone that is got their eyes set on the Olympic Games and maybe competing there at the age of 18 or 19, then maybe for you, going down that elite path straight away at 18 will give you that advantage of being able to focus on just one thing. But it's swings and roundabouts, and I think it's going to be different for everybody. Me personally, I just never would have been able to handle balancing those two things. I'm somebody that takes everything to the extreme, so I don't think that would have been right for me. I think later in life it may have been, and I was given that opportunity. And again, we've got another question relating to that later on. But I think really, mate, it's very much down to the individual. But there is, you look at America, Japan, and many other countries around the world. There are plenty of athletes that do study and do compete at the very highest level. I think you have to be incredibly organised, and you have to make sure that, and you have to probably have a very mature, level head on your shoulders to be able to balance those two things and get the best out of both. So I do think it's possible, but it's certainly a challenge, and it's very difficult, and it's something that I wouldn't have been able to handle at the age of 18, 19, but I know lots of athletes that did and that would be able to handle that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question in a roundabout way, mate. Next question that you asked was around the commercial side of the sport and potential new formats and how do we grow the sport. I mean, it's a question that we're always trying to answer in gymnastics. And again, another question around that. How do I see the sport growing commercially? I think it's down to the athletes now in many ways in those situations. I think the sport is trying to do things, but I think they're very slow on the uptake, and it's taking time. And I think that traditional format of 3-hour-long competitions just doesn't translate very well to TV, and certainly the way things are going and social media and everything's very quick and fast paced. I certainly think the length of those competitions is a big problem. We need to try and shorten the competitions down to make them more digestible for people sitting and watching back home, but also in the arenas as well. I mean, sitting there with a family for 3 hours, you've got young kids, it needs to be more engaging than that. So I think changing that side of things. I think individually it's down to the athletes to make sure that they're making themselves somebody that a brand would like to align themselves with, whether that's through your results and the amount of medals that you're winning and the way you're representing yourself, or whether it's down to the following that you bring and the eyes you're bringing to the sport. There are lots of different ways to go about that, but ultimately I think in terms of the commerciality and raising your profile as an individual, and if we get big personalities and big individual profiles, that will hopefully translate to that trickle-down effect and the whole team benefiting from that and the whole sport. I think that's probably the way that's going to happen, and maybe in the next few years as we lead into LA with America being what it is, supersized, and the attention that we're going to have on gymnastics because of Simone Biles and the success of the men's American team, I think it could be a great opportunity for those athletes, and I can see some athletes trying to take that opportunity at the moment as well, which is great to see. None other than Luke Whitehouse, who is, not only going about winning the medals, he's doing all the right things in terms of his own personal brand and trying to build partnerships and relationships. And yeah, it's very professional the way that he is conducting himself at the moment. I really like to see that. Very smart. So yeah, commerciality side, new formats. I don't know. It's been tried twice. If memory serves me correctly now, I've been involved both times. First time was the Pro Gymnastics Challenge run by the International Gymnastics Camp and the team there. Didn't really take off. It was on ESPN. It was a great event to perform in. I loved it. But I don't think they had the capital to make it work again. Those big events like that are put in a big arena and put on TV, from speaking to the people that are running them and the production team and the people that put the money into it and are funding it, you always lose money. So you're going to need a big bank account to make that happen. The Superstars of Gymnastics 2019, you had Simone, Max, Fabian, all the biggest names in the sport there, right? And it still didn't really work. And Matchroom were behind that, and they're one of the biggest names in sport. And certainly one of the best at taking a sport from amateur to professional and bringing the money in, and that didn't work. So, I almost feel like you probably need the right team of people, the right makeup of people, but you also probably need some big money, and whether that's, money coming in from Saudi Arabia, I'm not quite sure. Have had a conversation with somebody recently that potentially is in talks with someone out there in that part of the world. So if that happens, that'd be great. And in terms of formatting, I do think that there is a lot of scope to have something very separate to the traditional format of Olympic gymnastics and those rules, have something on the side that maybe brings in a different type of viewers, and it might give athletes recently retired an option after gymnastics and help them in that transition phase between being a professional athlete and then going into normal society and getting a job and struggling with that transition. It might give them an income, and that's a way that they continue to participate in gymnastics. So there are things going on in the background a little bit, but at the minute it's just very much rumours. But I hope so. That's the dream, right? So yeah, that would be great if that ever happens. And then the final question from Musa: combining disciplines and training venues. I think what he was speaking about here was that he'd love to see maybe gymnastics and calisthenics working together more. It's really interesting. There are a lot of sports that have sprung up that incorporate a lot of bodyweight training and gymnastics training, and actually I had a conversation at David Lloyd recently about running an adults gymnastics class and whether that be possible, because over the past 2 months I think I've stopped and had a chat and given some tips and help and some advice to maybe half a dozen adults that I'm seeing in a normal fitness gym trying to do handstands. So there's something there. I don't know what it is. I don't know how you capture that. And maybe adult gymnastics is a way to go around that. But I always said if you could have a big giant training facility, but again, you're going to need a big backer and a lot of people and the right team. And you could have almost like a bodyweight center where you have a gymnastics facility, a rock climbing facility, maybe you've got like a martial arts facility, and then you could have calisthenics, or whether it's, now people are doing high rocks, all of that in one place, but like a specialist bodyweight center. That would be really cool. But again, I mean, the type of money you'd have to have is huge. And the way I always visualized that was almost like you'd have like the center point, which would be maybe where the parents would spend time. There's a cafe, and then that is surrounded by different gyms for all these different sports that are all open, so you can see into all of them, and there's loads of collaboration that's going on. And maybe you get a kid that's great at gym, but they might be more suited to rock climbing, and instead of just leaving that facility, they go over to rock climbing. Or you get a kid at rock climbing that's great at that, but he loves going upside down, he's super brave, he comes to gymnastics, and they all kind of do each other's sports. And whether that's kids or adults, I always thought that would be an amazing idea. So, yeah, maybe one day in the future that would happen. But I think gymnastics has to maybe, and gymnastics clubs, always looking for new revenue streams, and I think tapping into that calisthenics and the hunger for adults to get into gymnastics and do bodyweight sports, tapping into that a little bit more would be really cool. And maybe an adult-specific gymnastics club is something that in those big cities where there is a lot of people wanting to explore what's possible physically, that might be a way to go for somebody, a little bit of a different direction rather than just opening a normal traditional gymnastics gym for kids, basically. Great questions, mate. Next one is Monica Stask, and Monica's always engaging with the podcast and sending in questions and feedback, which is brilliant, so thank you for that, Monica. Again, she's got a good bunch of questions, so I'm going to go through them. First one: what was your family dynamic like? And you've got a strong childhood memory. I think, for me, sport was always a massive part of my life and our family's life. Lots of sports people in my family, particularly football, but my great-granddad was an ice skater. My other great-granddad played pool. My other granddad on my mum's side was a big sports fan. My mum went to gymnastics when she was a kid. So there was a lot of sports there intertwined in the family dynamic. I think that just continued through me and my brother. And when my sisters came along, I think, like any sporting family, when the oldest child goes to a sport, the others kind of get dragged along. So they all tried gymnastics, but none of them wanted to stick at it in the end. It was, I think you have to be a certain way, you have to be wired a certain way, and I think gymnastics certainly attracts a certain type of person, but I think they all benefited from trying it in the beginning, but it did, that family dynamic was certainly shifted in a way that at times I was certainly taking up a lot more resources than my other siblings, which, is a difficult thing for any family to navigate. And I found that hard as I got older and I started to realise that and mature and understand that. So I've always been very grateful and thankful for that. But I also appreciate now that they've got so many great memories from going to watch me in competitions, and whenever they were getting together and going to the restaurant the night before and having a great time and watching the competitions and going to these new cities or countries and going to do awesome, cool things. I was in an arena absolutely so petrified of going out to do a competition and wishing I could be with them, just having a great time. So it certainly brought them all together and gave them loads of amazing memories. And when I think back to the memories, it's probably when I was very young, I went and competed in a competition called the NDPs. I think a lot of my friends and gymnasts that I get together with, we always talk about that and have fond memories, because we'd go and we'd stay a bit longer and we'd go to the beach there in Whitley Bay and we had a great time. And yeah, that was just a really, really special time around that time. So I loved that. And that was before things probably got too serious. So real family memory, and obviously having my family there at the Olympic Games, because it was a team effort. It really was a team effort, and they weren't able to sit together, but all my brothers and sisters, my mum and dad were there, the people that were most important to me and that played the biggest roles in that journey, and without them I'd never have been able to do it. It really was a team effort, and I'm so grateful to all of them for that and for supporting my journey. And I think it was that having them there was really, really special. And it was cool. We just watched a video before this, some Olympic Games footage, and seeing my family on there like dead happy and smiling, and very, very special to have been able to give them that. And then my little sister, she was only 7 at the time, and I remember when we won the bid, when she was born, thinking, wow, if I go to the Olympics, my little sister will be 7 or 8 years old. That'd be amazing. And so there's a picture of her in a GB onesie holding my Olympic bronze medal, smiling. And to me, whenever I see my sister now, she's in her 20s now, she still looks like that, and she's never changed. I think, it was cool. It was bigger than just me, so it was really, really cool. Language barrier. So basically Monica asked how did you manage the language barrier with Sergey, and how was trust established, which is a brilliant question. There was a big language barrier in the beginning, and, we communicated through hand signals and gestures and body language. And maybe that's one reason why I'm quite good at reading body language, is because I had to learn that through Sergey. And at times in my career, it was because he wasn't going for a very good period in his life, and I wanted to know what kind of Sergey I was going to get that day. And I'm sure he did the same, vice versa, on the other way around. And in the end, we knew each other absolutely inside out. We could just walk into a room and not have to have a conversation, know exactly what mood the other person was in. So I think developing that trust, that took a lot of time. It took a lot of time for Sergey to trust me, and give me some control of my gymnastics. It took a lot of time for me to, in the end, trust him again and give him full reign of my gymnastics. So I think that's something that developed over time, but I think the trust now there is so strong. That bond is absolutely rock solid, because we've been through thick and thin together. Some of the very best and worst times of each other's life we've shared and been right alongside each other. So I think that trust, it took a long time to build, but it's right there. I spoke to him the other day, called him, told him about my life. He told me about his, and it was like we saw each other yesterday and we just left training. It was amazing. I miss him a lot. I really do. He's such a great human being. Whenever I see anyone, they're always singing his praises, saying how amazing he is. And it's been a difficult thing to lose that mentor figure in my life. It's one thing that I've certainly struggled with. I think for all athletes out there that are maybe retired and are listening, I think recently I've really started to understand the things that I lost when I retired. And there were things that I gained, freedom, I think opportunity, time. But I certainly lost a community. I lost a mentor, and I certainly lost a lot of structure. And I certainly lost that thing that gave me a lot of purpose when I retired. So I've struggled with those things, but I think that trust was built through the very difficult times, and knowing that he was going to be there for me no matter what, and that I was there for him no matter what, and being very open and honest and vulnerable with each other. And it's a journey, right? There were times where the trust wasn't there at all from either side. But we knew, I think, deep down that each other cared a lot about the other person. And I know that he's never told me this, but I'm pretty confident that he sees me as a son and I see him as a second father. So we're always going to have a very special relationship. So great question, Monica. Okay, next person is... Oh no, this is actually Monica as well. So last one from Monica. If you went to university now, what would you study? Great. I think probably a few years ago, maybe something like business. I think now maybe psychology, maybe philosophy, something I'm really interested in how people think, what makes them tick, and that's probably why I do this podcast. My favourite thing in the world is conversation. Everyone takes the piss, basically, that, oh, here goes another deep conversation. You can't just have a normal one with me. Me and Connie had a really good chat about this because we were at a wedding last week, and she listens to this podcast, these two people that are made in Chelsea, and she put it on while we were driving to Cornwall because it was a big old drive. And I was like, I don't want to listen to this crap. And I let her listen to it, and I was like, this is actually pretty good. And the guy on it, he's literally like me. I was like, oh my God, it's like listening to myself. It's really, really interesting listening to him talk. And she was telling me about an episode that she listened to like this week where they were talking about how different people interact and how that a lot of people at first glance, when they first meet this guy, they think he's very intimidating or a little bit rude or very quiet and shy. But she knows, his partner, that he's not like that. And Connie was like, that's just like you. Like, a lot of people, I think you're intimidating. They just don't know you. Like, they just don't have the context of you. But it's so funny how, like, she was like, he just wants to have deep conversations or not have them. I was like, yeah, I'm a bit like that. But I also, like, struggle having those deep conversations because they're quite emotionally taxing. So I'm learning now, like, when to have them and how to reserve my energy and who I want to have those deep conversations with and when they're important and when they're not. And you don't always want to be that guy because it's important to be able to be silly and, like, have fun and have relax. Otherwise, people are like, don't want to be around this guy. But it was just so funny. But I think, yeah, university program, probably psychology or something like that. I'd love that. I really love people. So, yeah, I think that'd be great. I'd really enjoy that. And the fact that I'm getting into representing athletes and mentoring and working with young athletes and trying to help them avoid the mistakes I made myself, I think just delving deeper into that would be really fascinating. So it would be that, Monica. Thanks for your questions. Next one is from Samuel. Again, I think he's a gymnast, maybe based in the UK. Really, really interesting question. Can you talk about the style and technique differences between regions and nations? What a great question that is. So, yeah, there is a real big difference. And I think some of the times that I personally experienced this clash the most was, you know, at Loughborough University when I was based there, the coach that was based at that gym was my first national coach, George Prodescu, an amazing human being, and probably the person that I would, as a human being, and the person that I would maybe trust the most in the world of gymnastics after Sergey, and I spent a lot of time with, is probably George, you know, and but we have a real differencing, a clash of technique because he's from a Romanian background, Sergey's from a Russian background. And it's like chalk and cheese in many ways. And quite often George would take me into his little room that he had if he was looking after me, because he was very kind and he did that a lot when Sergey was away. And he was there, and he was there to support me and help me with my gymnastics. And he would try and encourage me to watch these techniques of these Romanian gymnasts. And some of these gymnasts were my heroes growing up. Marius Urzica, Marian Dragulescu, but particularly on the high bar where some of those gymnasts at times struggled, although they had some great gymnasts in the past. Marius Gurman, who's based out of Scotland and trains there, some of the most exciting gymnastics ever. You know, for me, I was brought up in a very traditional Russian style of gymnastics, and I loved that. That's just what I loved. I resonated with that, and that's the type of gymnast I wanted to be. So I found it very hard when George was trying to encourage me to maybe lean towards doing some of these more Romanian-based techniques and styles. But for me, I think when it comes to technique, there are some key fundamentals that are almost... they're inevitably important when you perform those skills. But how you get to them, it doesn't matter. That's style. That's the difference of opinion and the way that you go about doing that. But there are some things you just can't get around, I don't think. And that's kind of how I look at it. And I appreciate all styles. There are some that I enjoy personally watching more than others. I I really like the Russian style of gymnastics. That's because I grew up on Alexei Nemov. I love the Japanese style. Maybe I don't enjoy the Chinese as much as I do the Japanese, but I still respect it. And I maybe don't enjoy the Romanian style as much as the Russian, but I still respect it. I love all gymnastics, right? And that's what's beautiful about it. It's just an expression of different cultures and beliefs and training and systems and history. And that's what's really cool about the sport. And, you know, I don't think you'd ever consider gymnasts in Great Britain having a style in the past because we didn't have a long, rich history of success, but I think you probably would now. And maybe that's a mixture of both of the two, our own British style and also an influence of the Eastern European bloc and adapting some of the Japanese technique because the Japanese used to come and train with us every year. And now I think we do. You see a British gymnast, I think you can tell really strong, solid technique, some of the best coaches in the world when it comes to technique, I think. We're really good on floor. And I think we've kept that tradition for a long time. And I know that at times we've been the very best in the world on pommel horse. But when I think of Neil Thomas in the early 90s and I think of my generation and the continued success we had on floor and how many great floor workers we had across the whole of the team and how many great floor workers we've got now in Jake Jarman, Harry Hepworth and Luke Whitehouse, I really think we do have the best floor workers in the world, which is really cool. So yeah, I think technique does change in the different styles. For me, gymnastics is like artwork. And I just always have loved watching the Russian style and the Japanese style. And that's what I try to style my gymnastics technique of. And then I guess secondly, to go to the style maybe between regions. Even here in the UK, I think there is a difference in technique and you can see that. And one thing I always noticed was that if you had successful gymnasts from different generations that trained at the same club, small nuances and the way they would like do subtle things like move their hand when they did a top change on high bar or flick their head or where they'd look or the style that they'd do a skill, even though they were from different generations, because they trained in the same gym and they're used to watching that day after day after day. You know, they're almost learning how to do it, and it's that muscle memory, and they're creating those pathways before they learn those skills themselves when they're kids, and they end up doing it the same way. Quite often I would watch Dominic Cunningham and Christian Thomas, two different generations from the same gym, perform gymnastic skills in the same way, and I'd be like, whoa, I can see the club's imprint on their gymnastics. And I'd say the same thing for people based out of South Essex or out of Leeds, or maybe out of Nottingham in that style, or you could go, oh, they've been coached by Sergey, because the way they do that and they perform that in that style. So I really like those differences in techniques between even regions from nations, and that's what's cool about the sport, right? Like, I had this chat the other day with Connie, I think. I was like, you know, you always end up arguing about the differences of opinion, but if everybody had the same opinion, it'd be really boring. So I was like, sometimes maybe you should just let people have a difference of opinion and just be like, this is great that we don't agree. Because, you know, if we all thought the same thing, and I think it's probably the same with technique. If everybody's gymnastics looked exactly the same, there'd be no point watching the sport, you know? So, yeah, I like that, the difference in technique. And thank you for the question, mate. That was brilliant. Okay, next question. Carl Stromo. Have you got any advice for athletes between the ages of 19 to 21 with ambitions of competing at the highest level that just aren't there yet? I mean, I feel like this podcast is made for you, mate. We have those conversations all the time, particularly the Jamie Lewis episode that we've just listened to. He'd be an athlete around your age, 19, 21. Took him 3 or 4 years to really, you know, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and now he's getting all of that success. So definitely listen to a podcast episode with somebody like him that we've had on the podcast, and some of those younger athletes like Luke Whitehouse, Harry Hepworth, guys that maybe weren't the most successful junior athletes but now are having amazing success. Listen to their stories and learn from them. But I think the best advice that I could give you at the age of 19, 20, 21 is make sure you're an open book. Always be open to learning from everybody. Make sure you're a sponge, taking all that information. If you get the opportunity to train with somebody that is that level above you, take it. Spend as much time as you possibly can with those people. Ask them questions. Watch the way they do things, how they prepare, how they interact with other athletes in the gym. Are they acting like a champion before they're even a champion? How professional are they? Are they always on time for training? Just watch these things. You can learn how to win by watching other people win and their behavior and what winning behavior is. So that would be my advice, mate, at the age of 19, 21. And again, really stretch your time horizon. You know, you've got plenty of you. I'm 32 now, and I'm swinging around the high bar with no pain and doing some of the gymnastics I was doing at the end of my career 4 years ago. So the fact that you're still that young, you've got so much time to be able to develop and get to that top level. Don't be in a rush to get there, because what you might find is if you get there really quickly, it's really hard to stay there. Getting there is actually the easy bit. And if you can take a slow, gradual approach, I think you'll maybe find yourself getting there, enjoying the process a little bit more, and being better equipped to stay there. Because once you're in that team and you're at that highest level, you are now the hunted. You're not the hunter. And there are not just 3 or 4, 5 guys above you to beat. It's 20 guys below you trying to beat you every single time you go out and compete. So yeah, appreciate the position you're in. It's a great place. There's not a lot of pressure there. You've got nothing to lose. So just go out there, make sure you're enjoying it. Make sure that you are going into every single session ready to learn, and giving all the people around you in your support team, whether it's coach, physios, doctors, the respect that they deserve, and trusting their ability to do what's best for you and make those decisions. And most importantly, mate, just make sure that you are being your own best friend and your own support network. And you're just, honestly, if you can just go into each training session and just in life in general as what can I achieve? What is possible? I think that as a mindset is really, really helpful. It's almost it's that glass half full, glass half empty kind of conversation. And I think that is just a real positive place to start from. And from that place, you might find you have some great success and results in the future. So hopefully that answers your question, mate. And thank you for it. Next question we've got. What would your advice be for amateurs that can maybe only train once a week, and how can they adapt to the code of points? I'm guessing that, I am seeing a bit of an increase in adult gymnastics, a focus on it, and also people competing at the British Masters. I am personally trying to do an exhibition competition next year in the spring. I've asked if some of my old teammates can do it with me for many different reasons, and I'm basically able to train about an hour every couple of weeks. So nothing like the type of training I was able to do when I was competing at a higher level. I was training 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, just an hour every 2 weeks. So, in terms of the time spent training, it's that amateur level. And, you might even be training more than me. Just to go back to it before I get, that question was from Lars Gerber. So thank you, mate. Great question again. I think my advice is just have fun with a code of points. Don't look at the end of that code of points on the right-hand side and those E, F, and G skills. Really focus on those cool moves that nobody ever does, those A's and those B's. Think about your strengths. What am I really good at? What are my strengths in gymnastics? Have I got great spatial awareness? Am I strong? Am I flexible? How can you use those strengths and adapt them into the skills that are suited to those strengths on those apparatus, and really play with it, have fun with it? I'd love to be able to just go and, put a routine together of 5 A's or B's that are really interesting that no one ever does. Make those routines unique and enjoy the process of trying to master them. And not being perfect, because that's never possible, but really aiming and striving for that perfection in those skills, and really looking at the code of points and studying it and going, oh, what cool little skills can I look here? Go back to watch gymnastics from the 1950s and 60s when they used to perform those skills at the Olympic Games. You'll find so many cool, unique skills. So I think it's just, again, a little bit like the last question, that perspective of what is possible, what kind of gymnastics could I do, what kind of gymnast am I, what are my super strengths that I'm bringing to the table, what skill set do I have, and how can I improve on that, and what are my best apparatus. And maybe I focus on 1 or 2 of my real strengths on those apparatus, and then the other apparatus are maybe my middle of the road apparatus, and my other 2 are just my consistent routines that I try to hit. So that would be my advice, mate, for anybody that's doing amateur gymnastics. And again, don't get bogged down in how much training you need to be doing. I'm doing an hour every 2 weeks, and look, I've got an incredibly massive base, right, to work from. So I don't need to do that much training. A lot of it is like this mental rehearsal, muscle memory. I've done tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Kovac actions in my life. So I can get by with just visualizing the action in my head, doing a few timers with my hand, and probably catching it either first go or second go every time I go into the bar every few weeks. But that was years and years of training. But just try and enjoy it and explore. Just see what's possible and look for some of those cool moves. Make sure it's exciting you and you're passionate and you're motivated about it, and don't forget why you started in the first place. And that would be my advice, mate. So hopefully that helps. The next one is from an Instagram account called Gymnastics Fantastic, and they're always sharing a lot of the stuff that we produce, so thank you to those guys, and they're doing a great job. Those gymnastics Instagram accounts are so great. I mean, gymnastics is such an amazingly visual sport that they do really, really well and get so many people. They're doing such a great job for the sport, bringing so many eyeballs to it. It's really, really cool. This one is question number 11. He's put, how's the code of points changed the sport over time? Really interesting question, and I think I'm going to start where we are right now. I always feel like the sport is continually getting more and more difficult and pushing the limits of both execution and difficulty. You look at routines from the past, and again, there are a lot of Instagram accounts that do this, and they get a perfect 10, but you look now in today's viewpoint and lens from the judge's perspective, and they're nowhere near a 10. They might get an 8.5 execution, and that's just how the sport has evolved over time. Our idea of perfection changes. You watch Su Jing Yang on parallel bars, and you go, that's a 10, where are the deductions? But you can maybe go through it with a fine-tuned comb and find a couple of them, but 20 years ago, he'd get a 10 every single time he did that routine. And then the difficulty, it just gets higher and higher and higher and higher, and I always like looking at what the specialists were doing a few years ago. And I think that the all-arounders are always a few years behind the specialist. So if you look at what the top specialists are doing on each apparatus, and then you go, okay, fast forward 3 or 4 years' time, that's what the top all-rounders are going to be doing. So for any young athletes out there that want to be a top all-rounder at LA 2028, have a little look at what the best specialists on each apparatus are doing right now, and that's going to give you a good idea of the level of gymnastics you're going to need to do by LA 2028. So that's a great little bit of insight for any of those young athletes that are listening here, and that age bracket of 19 to 21. If you have a look at what is Luke Whitehouse doing on floor, what is Eleftherios Petronas doing on the rings, what is the new gymnast from Armenia, Hamlet, doing on pommel horse, what are the best high bar workers doing right now, because that's the level of gymnastics I'm going to need to do to be a top all-rounder in 4 years' time, and gymnastics is slowly going back towards being a strong all-rounder and being able to offer a lot for that team result. So that would be my best advice there. And in terms of how the sport has evolved and the code's changed it, it's changed it massively. I mean, we went from the perfect 10. I think a big code change in my lifetime in the 90s was removing the compulsory element. I think as soon as we did that, we steered more towards the difficulty than the artistry. And, we had Mike Canales on recently, an episode that people always come up to me and say that was fascinating. And he's a big fan of artistic gymnastics and the beauty of it, and those compulsory routines and the traditional side of the sport. We moved away from that, and the difficulty grew after Sydney. We get to Athens, the code jumps from the perfect 10 to open-ended, and then we just get an explosion of difficulty, an explosion in the improvement in the equipment that we're using, and we've got to a point now where we're merging the difficulty and the execution, and we've just had another big change and dropped the sport from 10 skills to 8, and I think, we've had a few athletes on already. That's only going to translate to even more difficult gymnastics being packed in to a smaller number of skills, and it's going to bring everybody closer together. And I think moving forward in the future, all we're going to see is real high-level gymnastics from all over the world, and I actually think we're going to go back to seeing some of the best all-arounders being the guys that take some of the specialist medals, and we don't see that. Vitaly Sherbo in 1992 at the Olympic Games wins the all-around the team and 4 individual apparatus gold medals. We've never seen that since. We've seen the rise of the specialists, but I think moving forwards, I think we're always going to have these specialists, but we're going to have more and more all-arounders that are competitive in apparatus finals, especially now that it's been reduced to 8 skills instead of 10. I think it brings everybody closer together. So that's how I see the code developing as we move forward. And just to touch on that, I think it's one of the topics that I've got, but as far as I'm aware, the wide balance and the scale on floor is gone, and they've done it. It's out of the code, which everybody's been crying for, right? So I think by World Championships That's been taken out, and good on them for doing it, because they could have just dug their heels in and protected their egos and not made that change, but they've made that change, so well done to the FIG for changing that and taking it out. Small victory there from the gymnastics community, I think. But again, just a rule that should have never been in there in the first place. But there we go. We're trying new things, and sometimes you get things right and sometimes you get them wrong. But fair enough that they've gone back on that and they've changed it. Okay, next one was from Turn. We've got 2 left. Again, comes back to changes to the traditional format and how that might suit TV. Again, it's that pace and that speed of those competitions. And if you look at any of the big sports where there's lots of money and you've got that broadcasting TV money coming into it, you've got a break or a half time when there can be sponsors and you've got adverts. You're able to bet on the sport. It's big. You're able to follow the journeys of the athletes because they play in a league and they compete every single week. And we just don't have that in gymnastics. You might get to see them 2 times a year. So how do you really build a connection with those athletes? Really hard to follow that narrative of following your team. And maybe in the future we'll get to a place in Great Britain where people give it a go and we have a league like the Bundesliga. I found out recently actually that they have a very strong league in South Korea, and it's so good that the athletes can just live off what they get paid in the league, because they get tens of thousands of pounds. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've never heard of that before. And they have very high level gymnastics in South Korea. And maybe because they have that and that system and they make so much money that they don't have to work, that takes their eye off the ball internationally, because that never really translates to them being really successful on the international scene. And maybe because there isn't that pressure to perform and then get the funding, because they have it from their clubs competing in that league in South Korea, they're a little bit isolated and they just don't really need to push themselves to get those results on an international stage. So really interesting dynamic that. But I would say on that, having watched a little bit of the World University Games, super impressed with the new generation of young South Korean gymnasts. I've always thought they do exciting gymnastics, and they always wear my favourite colours on a leotard. It always looks cool, like a Pepsi can, like an old school Pepsi can. So really impressed with the South Koreans. But I think it's got to be some kind of league that can build a fan base where you follow it along, even if that's just some kind of league where the athletes compete 4 times a year, but we need big personalities and big people and characters you can get behind. And you see that with all of those documentaries, whether it's the F1 documentary, whether it's the tennis one or sprint, they work because you get to know the athletes and you follow their journeys and you can connect to them. So I think that's what it needs. And in terms of the format changing, I'll always stand by getting rid of the Perfect 10 was just a stupid idea, because it is our unique selling point as a sport. So if we ever can find a way back to that, I think that's a good idea. Increasing the pace. Again, they are changing the format and they're trying things to make it exciting. Having one gymnast go up and then the other when it's a team final is great. They're trying the mixed team. Amazing for men's gymnastics. Whether the women's side gain much from it, I'm not sure, but for us it will certainly bring in a massive fan base from women's gymnastics that might be introduced to some of the male gymnastic stars, and which will be great in LA. Imagine having Frederick Richards and Simone Biles on a mixed team. It's like the dream, right? I think everybody will be rubbing their hands in the sport of gymnastics and the FIG if that happens. So I think, that's that we're trying, but for me it's a league, and you're probably going to need someone that really loves the sport and has got a massive, massive bank balance, and they're willing to just pump a load of money into it. And if that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know, but I think if the athletes at the end of their careers actually get paid really well and they're able to transition into life, I don't see that as a bad thing, because you're spending 21 years working 30, 40 hours a week, and sometimes you're retiring, you've got no backup plan, you've got no support from the system, and you're kind of on your own. It would be great to see there being some kind of another pathway that they could go down, and a revenue stream that would support them and give them a bit of a safety net. Because it's incredible. Again, like I said, it's so dangerous what these athletes are doing, these gymnasts. It's an incredible sport. And we always I know that the UFC was always started this way. It was just someone that was a big fanatic. They had a load of money. They threw it at it and it worked. And I always look at gymnastics and go, it's so amazing. People love it. We just need the right people to get together and make this happen, because people obviously love it because it's the first sport that sells out at the Olympics and everyone watches it at the Olympics. So how do you harness that and grasp it? I don't know. But it certainly, we're going to have to do things differently. And it isn't like, the team at Turn have said it's not going to be that traditional format. It's something new. maybe there's a group of people out there that have got the answers, and maybe I can be someone that helps facilitate that. I'd love to. And I've got my own ideas on a gymnastics format. And we'll see. Who knows? The future, anything can happen, anything. I wouldn't have said 20 years ago I'd be able to sit here and talk about gymnastics on a podcast every week. So let's see what can happen in the next few years. And I think the last one is just a question that came in from Roel Dankers. And he asked, what age would you specialise at, or do you recommend specialising at? Again, just very personal to the individual. I think he's 20 and he's decided to specialise and concentrate on his strengths. A number of factors. People specialise for different reasons. I think it depends on your motivations. It depends what the big goals and the drivers are and your aims at that point in time. If you're under a lot of pressure to get some results, to get some funding, to be able to carry on doing the sport that you love, then maybe you choose to specialise a little bit earlier and put some other apparatus on the back burner for a bit. Maybe you've got an injury that means that, you can't quite perform on an apparatus like you used to be able to, and it's changed the course of your career and you're going to have to push and just specialise on a certain apparatus. Maybe you've just got a real super strength on one apparatus and you could be the best in the world if you focus your time on it. I think that's different for everybody, and in terms of an age and a time, it depends. There's part of me that thinks back to my own career and goes, maybe in that last Olympic cycle I should have looked at specialising on the high bar, and if I did that, who knows what I could have achieved and how good I could have got on it if I wasn't spreading my time so thinly between 6 apparatus, 52 different skills, and I just focused on the 10 skills on the high bar. Who knows what I could have done or achieved. That wasn't my path, but maybe somebody at the age that I was at in the mid-20s, 3rd, 4th Olympic cycle, maybe they'd sit back and listen to my story and go, do you know what? I really enjoy just doing this. And the other stuff is bringing me a lot of anxiety and stress and pain, and physically it's tough and it's too demanding and I'm tired and I want to try other things. Maybe specialising is the right thing for you. So very individual. You've got someone like Harry, right, that effectively is a multiple apparatus specialist, and he's quite happy with that and he's having unbelievable success. So I don't think there's any right or wrong, and it's very much the personal circumstances. I think if you're an all-around gymnast and that's what you really love. For me, that's what it was all about for me, gymnastics. I always wanted to be an all-rounder. So I just was never attracted to being a specialist. I always wanted to be an all-arounder, and then if I was great on other apparatus, amazing, that's a byproduct. For the most important for me personally was being an all-arounder. So thank you guys for all of those questions. Absolutely brilliant. I've written down a few topical things that I was going to touch on. I think we've touched on most of them. The Italian gymnast, Lorenzo Bocelli, I think his name was. All the best to him and his family and the Italian gymnastics community. I hope you get well soon. And again, a real reminder of just how dangerous the sport of gymnastics can be. I don't know what it was, the skill. He did it on rings, which is a little bit unusual. And imagine potentially slipped. So if anyone's listening, they know it was potentially slipping. I've had that times in the past. I've slipped off myself. I think we have a YouTube video of me at a Bundesliga match slipping on the rings. And I did that a few times in my career. So it can be very, very dangerous. You really are putting your physical health on the line when you go out and compete there. So all of the respect to any of the athletes that put their hand up on the biggest stage doing the biggest gymnastic skills. I know Simone's been all over the media recently for lots of different reasons, upsetting people and having a few back and forths on Twitter. I think, I'd always steer towards athletes just focusing on their sport, just try and ignore the noise and maybe making sure that you've got people around you that are going to tell you the truth always, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And look, I don't know the context of Simone's situation and what the team that she's got around her. She's obviously the biggest name in our sport, so you have to talk about her. I've only met her a couple of times and she was always very nice when I met her. But I did often think, wow, this is... to have been in this limelight and to have been this good from this age of just 16, wow, this is a lot of pressure. And I think you need to make sure that hopefully she's got the right people around her that aren't just yes people, and she's being protected. She just stays out of that and focuses on what she's really good at, the gymnastics. Because she is amazing at that. It's going to be great to hopefully see her in LA. But stay out the political side of things, focus on your gymnastics, Simone. I think that's that's the advice that I would give. And then I got sent another clip by, I don't know if this clip was real, but I was tagged in it. It was a clip of Rylan Clark on a very big podcast. And basically the clip, and I'm sure it was taken out of context, and I actually have a lot of respect for what he's done with his career. because I remember watching a skit once with him and like Ant and Dec, and I was laughing my head off. It was so funny. And he's gone on to have a really good media career, and you can't do that without taking some real big risks and working very, very hard. So credit to him. But he was on this podcast, and someone took this clip and they posted it, and there was loads of gymnasts getting really angry. And I've seen that, and it's funny because I would have probably reacted like that as a younger man, even a few years ago. But I've been on the receiving end of everybody reacting that way when we had that video that went viral, and everybody calling me a clown. And he basically was like, look, if I wanted to be a Team GB gymnast at the next Olympic Games, if I wanted that and I trained every day and trained hard enough, I could do that. Anything's possible. I'd be on the Olympic team. And, you know, past Sam would have gone, oh my God, this guy's clueless. What is he talking about? But I now understand. He just doesn't understand. He doesn't have the context. You don't know what you don't know. He's never been to a gymnastics gym and trained. So, I'm certainly not going to berate him for that. But I was sent that clip by someone, really lovely person that follows the podcast, and she asked me what I thought, and I said, just not taking that very seriously. It just is what it is. I don't think you can take it that seriously. But there were lots of gymnasts I saw commentating on it and getting really outraged and angry about it. But it was funny to see they'd made an AI kind of like picture of him in a Team GB leotard on the rings. Firstly, I was like, he looks way too tall to be able to be doing gymnastics. But I like the self-confidence, and it'd be great to see him in a gym. But again, it's just that context. You don't know what you don't know. And I've certainly learned to mature and adapt and change my way of thinking and not be so rigid and be open to things, and also not ridicule people that don't have that context and have maybe never been to a gymnastics gym or understand just the difficulty of the sport. But I got sent that clip, and it was quite interesting because that was doing the rounds. And I think, again, we talked about the floor scale. Amazing. We succeeded, everybody. It's gone. So we don't have to be embarrassed of the sport when people are watching that and they don't know the sport and they're like, why are they doing that balance where they can't actually hold it? So that's gone. And then I went to a team gym event yesterday. So with Joe Fishburne, who came on the podcast, who won the Gladiators. Great guy. Never seen team gym before. Got to say, when I walked into the gym, the atmosphere was so positive and amazing. And I've never seen team gym. And team gym is basically all the really exciting elements of gymnastics in terms of the tumbling stuff. So it's like vault with a trampette. It's a trampette. It's a tumble track. They're doing a floor routine and they're practicing on trampoline. So you just see kids flying through the air. And, artistic gymnastics isn't for everyone. It's like I talked about with my brothers and sisters. There's often nowhere else for them to go if they do enjoy the sport, and somewhere like Team Gym is perfect. I don't think there's many specialist Team Gym gyms. This gym was based in Crewe, and it was an amazing place. So anybody that's interested in getting their kids in gymnastics, but maybe not artistic, and their kids are really brave and they love going upside down and like skateboarding and that kind of stuff, maybe Team Gym's for them. And they were trying to get me to get involved. With my ankles and my heel, I don't think that's the sport for me. But I really loved being there, and hopefully I can, cross paths with Team Gym a little bit more in the future. And it's a really cool sport, and I hope that the profile for Team Gym is raised, because for me, any form of gymnastics expression, whatever discipline it is great, and that's what I want to promote. So thanks to Joe for getting me on board with his Aspire camp, and they did a really good job there, and it was great to learn a lot about Team Gym. I just went there and just started asking all the coaches loads of questions, which was brilliant. And then I guess just to finish off, the comps that have just happened recently, we've had EOF, GB guys won, Zakane, Uzair and Ewan, all three very talented and will definitely be challenging for LA in a few years' time in the senior GB team. So keep an eye out on those guys. They're certainly the talented lads coming through. I think two of them can compete at the Junior Euros next year, which is amazing because they've already got a gold medal from the last one. So maybe they can challenge some of those records we spoke about with Jamie Lewis. Ewan McPhillips, he won the all-around, which is an amazing achievement. I don't think many lads have won the all-around at EOF. I went to EOF in 2009 and won 2 individual golds, finished 9th, I think, in the all-around, so really good achievement. Super impressed with his level of gymnastics, particularly his difficulty on all of those apparatus. So well done, mate. That's awesome. I saw that. And then I think the World University Games, GB lads did really well. Very, very high level. Amazing opportunity to see the best in the world. Japanese team and also some new Chinese gymnasts. Hashimoto was there and Shinosuke. They battled it out in qualifying, and the current Olympic champion, Oka Shinosuke, didn't qualify for the all-around final. It's actually his teammate that qualified, Shohei. I can't off the top of my head remember his surname, but he's got really exciting gymnastics. High bars, unbelievable. Vault, Yuchenko double pike. guy to watch out for. Scores are about 84, 83 in the all-around, so that's what you're looking at next couple of years, I think, to challenge. Loads of guys there between kind of 75 to 81, and it's bridging that gap between kind of that 80, 81 mark up to the 83, 84. Best guys in the world are going to be hitting those scores. And, I think for me, Hashimoto and Zhang Boheng, the Chinese gymnast, they're the best in the world right now. On their day, if they perform, they're the two best. I think at the Olympic Games last year, what happened was it just was perfect timing for Oka Shinosuke, and he came through and he took advantage of Hashimoto being a bit of a rough patch and struggling physically, mentally. He took advantage of that and had his day. But I think on a good day, when they all perform, Hashimoto's difficulty and his all-around capabilities, he's the most all-rounded all-arounder, has that difficulty to challenge with Zhang Boheng. So to see them go at it maybe at the World Championships later this year in the all-around will be awesome. But no, massive well done to the GB team. They did really, really, really well. It's nice to see that. A great opportunity for some of those boys that might not have had it otherwise. So Luke Marsh, Sam Mustafi, Cami Lynn, Mikey Goddard and Luke Whitehouse. Well done, boys. Massive congrats to Luke. Won another gold on floor. And I think for him, he will have really seen this opportunity as a chance to test himself on the world stage as a prep for the World Championships. So if Luke could go and he could do it, put himself in a position to do it, qualify for that floor final, and get himself a world medal, I mean, what a year that would be. I mean, he's British title, European title, World University Games title, potentially world title. Wow. What a year. And I can see, like I said, very smart athlete. And my advice for anyone out there looking to build a career, get sponsors on board, fund their gymnastics, just watch what Luke's doing. I can see what he's doing from the outside. I know he's got a management company now that look like they're advising him very well. He's starting to work with brands. You would take a close look at his social media and his Instagram and what he's doing, the pictures he's sharing. Very, very smart. It's a playbook that he's probably taken from lots of different athletes that he's been around, and it's going to be really exciting to see what he does. But yeah, thank you, everybody. And like I said, 130 episodes, super proud. 2.5 years. It feels like yesterday me and Sam started doing these episodes. Sometimes it really does feel like episode 5 or 6 was last week. So yeah, amazing. We've had a great run of episodes recently. I'm heading out to Singapore to do some coaching out there, so I'm sure I'll bring back some experiences and insights from that. And as we go into the autumn, we're going to have a heavy focus on the World Championships coming up. We're going to keep pushing to have some big guests on and also some different guests and explore some maybe gymnasts from different countries and do a few different things. But we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, bringing some real good conversations from the world of gymnastics and the world of sport. And thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. Make sure you subscribe, wherever it is that you listen, whether it's Spotify, Apple. Interestingly, it's about equal listeners that we have on Spotify and Apple right now. And we hit that 10K mark on YouTube again. We've gone over 10K for the first time in a very long time, in years. So that's really cool. So thank you to everybody supporting the podcast, the show, all of the work that me and Sam are doing. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.